I love being able to have conversations with artists who have been supreme influences in my life. And Bryan Duncan is at the top of the list. Since I first picked up Have Yourself Committed, I was hooked on his blue-eyed, soulful voice that didn't fit into any specific genre unless you consider great song after great song, great vocal after great vocal a genre. Then that's his own unique landing spot. And Bryan, as I played your records again, getting ready for this podcast, the memories just kept flooding back. Just songs like Darkness is Falling, Darkness is Falling. That was a favorite. Into My Heart, Out of My Head.
Oh, you sound better than I do.
Oh, my God. No way. Oh, of course. Love takes time. Please be kind. See, I every part of me. Yeah.
That song was inspired by, Please Be Kind, Please Rewind. Oh. It was back in the days of VHS. And I started singing that, and I'm going, I'll make a song out of that.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, I went through every one of your albums and I remembered all of them. There's so many great moments. So, hey, I just want to say thank you just from me and behalf of every other Christian artist that followed you. Man, I'm grateful for your music, and you are still a huge inspiration to me. So welcome to the podcast. Let's have a conversation.
It's good to be here. Podcast is the new thing.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, people are listening to it, man.
We don't have to go in the studio anymore. Just put it, say something and then put it up.
That's right.
Wow, it saves a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right. So I remember the first time I met you, we were at GMA Week. And for people who don't know what that is, so that's Gospel Music Week, where the Doves, are kind of the capstone to that. And all the artists in Christian music gather in Nashville. And you were at it was the Renaissance Hotel. Downtown, and you were sitting alone, having a cup of coffee somewhere up there's a coffee shop up there, and I was like, oh my God, it's Bryan Duncan. Like, I have to go say hello. And of course, I'm a nervous, like 25, 26-year-old kid. For him had maybe done our first or second record, and I just walked up to you, and you were just the nicest dude. Like you knew who we were, and you were so complimentary. And I think we talked for 5 or 10 minutes, but yeah, you were awesome, and I just really appreciated that.
I don't know if you remember, but I was on stage giving you some kind of an award for long-term thing. You guys were retiring as for him or something.
Yeah.
It was me and Andre Crouch and Michael Sweet from Stryper. We're all on the stage. I'm going, well, there's a combination of people. And we were giving away, we were announcing some kind of I can't even think what they were. Now I'm thinking Tombstone Awards. I'm going, I can't remember what they were. It was
let's don't do Tombstone Awards yet.
Yeah, these guys have been around, and now they're quitting, and now we're going to give them an award. And
I will say that you took our only shot at a Grammy. You were
really
on that. You were on that Andre Crouch tribute record, and our only nomination was for our album, The Message. And I just knew we were going to win. And then that thing popped up. I'm like, no, we're not going to win because everybody's going to vote for Andre Crouch. But,
well, you know what? Not only that, I mean, the thing about an album that wins like that is, you've got every artist under the sun on that record. So naturally, they're going to throw, if they don't have anything else up, they're going to throw their vote behind their own record.
Yeah.
I don't remember voting for it myself. I was the last person on there, and so I didn't even know what the record was about. I'm going, so we're doing something for Andre. But I didn't. I missed my chance to accept a Dove Award, by the way, because I was up for Inspirational Album of the Year, and I'm going, there's not a chance in crap that I'm gonna get that award. I'm not even an inspo record guy. So
which album was it?
It was Quiet Prayers.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't even go out in front, when they were announcing it. And I'm going, why do I want to be abused? There's nothing like sitting in the audience and say, and the winner is not you. And they got the camera on you, so you got to smile like you're really happy about that, and kind of wonder where your career went wrong.
So historically, West Coast Christian artists weren't as celebrated or got the awards that the
Well, out of
Nashville
sight, out
based
of mind.
Avis.
I
I think
think
so.
it's out of
Yeah.
sight, out of mind. You're just, and the fact that I wasn't in the audience, and then I won, and my producer went up and says, I don't know where he is. I was backstage talking to Kenny Rogers because I really liked his restaurant. He had Kenny Rogers Roasters, and I'm going, my favorite Christmas dinner every week. And
Incredible.
I'm chatting him up, and a couple hours later, somebody said, you won that. You should go get your trophy. And I'm going, oh man. So I'd like to just apologize on behalf of to GMA if they probably think that I was just snubbing them or something.
We probably were.
Well, you know what? No, I'm pretty much clueless. I'm not on meds for attention deficit, and that's created a lot of my management had a formal apology letter after most concerts.
Oh, that's so funny. I want to go back. Can we just go back? I mean, you had to have been just
Sure.
just a ball of energy when you were younger, and I just want to know how you started your career. Like, how did you get started in music? Like, there had to be some moment where you're like, I think I can do this for a living. Where did that start for you?
Well, that wasn't right away. My dad is a Pentecostal preacher, and he had a church in High Point, North Carolina. That's where I went to high school. And I was just a church kid. I wasn't in the Jesus movement either, frankly. But a woman gave me her son's guitar after he committed suicide. She started coming to our church, and she thought I was a lot like him somehow. And she gave me his guitar, and I didn't know how to play. So I started making stuff up. And then, long story short, I wind up over in California because I heard Love Song, and I'm going, oh my gosh, they get to have their hair long and, sing whatever they want. And it didn't sound like standard church music to me. First time I heard lend an ear to a love song. Ooh, love song. Oh my, I'm going, that's what I want to do. So, I mean, I literally loaded up the truck and I moved to Beverly.
Where did you move from? Where were you living at the time?
I went to college in Florida for a year and I got kicked out. They said I wasn't missionary material because I was playing rock music back then and they were trying to cast demons out of me. And so I go home, and that summer I didn't have anything to do and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So, and my cousin said, you should come to California because you can do whatever you want. Nobody cares. And I'm going, of course, eventually I wanted somebody to care, but I wound up out there and singing at the Jesus music tent, where everybody was, and all the bands were playing at that big tent in a vacant lot somewhere. And pretty soon I was playing there, and that's where I met the Sweet Comfort guys. And then we just started from there, but we were kind of an afterthought. The Jesus movement was 1970, 71, 72. And so we were kind of a ripple effect from, the actual impact of, what was that thing over there? Were you guys at that? The thing down in Dallas is a big Jesus festival of sorts.
You mean, well, see, we didn't get started until early 90s. So we're,
okay.
Yeah, we're quite a ways ahead of you.
Have been around. So
yeah.
it was like, okay, well, neither one of us were actually in the Jesus movement. In fact, when I first went to the hippie tent, that's what I called it. I was going to Christian college out in Costa Mesa, and I remember going to see Love Song for the first time, and I was wearing slacks and a button-down shirt, and I looked so East Coast that I felt completely out of place. So I went to Kmart and I bought me a T-shirt, and I called it my Monday shirt, and I would go every Monday night at this Bible study where they had concerts they had like a 45-minute concert from new bands every week. And it was like, I was just there for the bands. It was like, man, these guys are good. And it was everything. It wasn't just one style of music. It was country, soul, rhythm and blues. And of course the folk stuff, everything was big time acoustic folk music.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how did you meet the guys that you would form Sweet Comfort Band with?
I auditioned to play at the tent, and I went, and Tom Stipe is the guy that listened to me, and he was doing the Bible studies by then. And he said, I played him one song, and he said, how about playing tonight? And so I went from playing to 2 people to 1,500 in a matter of hours. And They heard me sing at one of the events. I would open for the real people, and people thought I sounded like Elton John, so they'd always call me that Elton John guy. So,
Huh. I can see that.
And then I met them at the back of the tent flap in the Jesus Movement tent that everybody talks about, and he was the first guy I'd ever met that was a bass player, Kevin. He says, I play bass. And I'm going, wow, I didn't know anybody plugged instruments in, because I was playing an acoustic guitar or a acoustic guitar and acoustic piano. And
yeah,
I'm going, wow, somebody uses an amp. So he happened to have a brother who played drums, and they'd been playing for years together. So when we got together to play, it was pretty tight from the get-go.
And then, so obviously Bob how'd you meet Bob?
Bob Carlile.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob. I didn't meet Bob till way later. Bob was singing he was singing with a group called Good News. First time I heard him was, and then it became Eric Nelson, but his band was Good News, and Bob Carlile was just the side background singer in that thing. But I heard him one night at Costa Mesa after they had built an actual building, and he was doing this song called Tear Down the Walls. And my gosh, he was just tearing it up. I couldn't believe it. He eventually, the last 3 or 4 records, the Sweet Comfort Band did, was doing all of our background vocals with us, because he just knew how to stack them in a hurry.
Yeah.
I hear him. And his famous line was, give me 6 tracks and get out of the room. Like, they wouldn't sound good, because no vibrato, just, and then stack, it sounded like nothing until you played it back, and then it sounded like the Beach Boys. Yeah. So, I mean, he was stupid good. And, needless to say, he went on to have his own career, but I remember him being really jealous. He says, man, I sure wish I was in Christian music, because he was doing background vocals for heavy metal bands, like Quiet Riot and Lita Ford. I can't remember all of them, but we became longtime friends. I still co-write with him sometimes. When he made so much money on Butterfly Kisses that I don't see much of him. It kind of ruins your motivation to keep doing music if you've made that kind of money. And like, okay, but he came along long time later, and I know that he filled in for me as the lead singer. Because Kevin wanted to go to Europe, and I just wanted out. By the time we got to the end of the band, it was like, man, I feel I spend more time with these guys than I do with my wife, and that didn't pan out well in the long run. She left me eventually, and it's all on me. So I was overly involved in me. That's all.
Yeah, but that's a common story. I mean, not that, every relationship ends that way, but there's a struggle with just about everybody I know, that because you are gone a lot, and you have to, if you're going to make it in this industry, you got to take every opportunity. You got to keep going. You got to keep saying yes to everything. And that's just,
I had to get counseling to say no to something. I mean, it was like,
Huh.
I felt like that was the unpardonable sin, is to turn something down, because you're a servant of God, and you're supposed to do whatever comes your way. And so, I mean, it was anti-obedience to say no to anything.
Yeah, it's, I'm always amazed when groups can stay together. I mean, because of, my band For Him, we could have kept going if we wanted to, I guess, but there's just something about you feel like there's a finish line you reach, and everybody has different ideas of where you should go after that. And sometimes it's best to just say sayonara and just go your own way. How did that breakup with Sweet Comfort Band happen? Because you guys were a mainstay in Christian music for so long.
Well, it certainly didn't feel like it. We just felt like we were road dogs all the time.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like we were always second string, even in our own church, Riverside, in that Jesus Revolution, we were there. We were playing all the high schools in Riverside, California, and doing all the events with Greg Laurie. But we were considered second string because we weren't from Orange County. And we were, and we were a 3-piece for the first year and a half. but it didn't feel like we were anything. And even at the end, we didn't feel like we accomplished anything.
Isn't that crazy?
You know,
Isn't that
at some
crazy?
point, you just don't see your impact, and probably a good thing that you don't see it, because then God gets the glory, I suppose. But at some point, I was tired of being late paying taxes and filing extensions, and I didn't know where the money went. It was like we were blowing up PA systems all the time, and so most of our money went to fixing equipment. And we flipped a trailer down the freeway in Hollywood
Oh,
once.
wow.
So we were always fixing stuff because we were always breaking stuff. And at the end of the day, we were in a plane crash down in Texas. And at the end of that, I decided, man, I started blaming it on Kevin and Rick. I'm going, these guys are just, they've got a hex on them or something, because the bus blows up, the trucks go down, it's always something. And I was 30, and I was expecting my first child, and I thought, man, I gotta grow up and get a job.
Wow. Did you feel like, though, that it was a call to ministry, or was it you were just really good at playing music?
Well, I wasn't the passionate Jesus people person, but I was raised in church, so it was a matter of working out my own salvation, according to Scripture, and finding my own passions. But I was kind of it was like Stephen, I was standing there watching him stone everybody else. It's like, I don't remember that story right now, but at some point I just started playing. But we still thought we would change the world. We thought we would have an impact, and if we did, we didn't know it, and it certainly didn't feel like it. By the end, you're burned out, and if you're tired, hungry, hurt, and lonely, you just can't see the truth anyway. But awful.
So what do you feel like now, looking back on those days? I mean, because you say Sweet Comfort Band to anybody that knows Christian music, it's a legendary band with so many great songs and great albums, and the musicianship and the songwriting. I mean, it's iconic. So how do you feel looking back now at those days?
Well, I don't own any of those records. I don't even know where most of them are. I mean, that record company has been bought and sold 3 times. I don't know what to think about it. The thing is, the one thing that I can put a feather in my cap for is that I stayed with music, and I stayed with songs, and I stayed with my diary of faith. That's what my songs were about. I mean, it wasn't worship music, and but it was about daily life with God most of the time.
Well, that's what Christian music was. I mean, we can, and I really think that's what's missing in Christian music today, is everything is worship related, which is great. There's nothing wrong with worship music, but there's a lost art of that great songwriting about daily life and the struggles that you're going through, and how Jesus can positively affect what you're going through. And again, just going back through your catalog, I'm like, I love this type of music. It talks about, I can tell who you are. I know what you're going through by these songs. I know what life you're living.
My mom used to say that too. She says, I know where you are just by listening to the most recent record. But I was pretty myopic, I guess. I was always thinking about me and how God was going to help me. Because you reach a certain age where you start going, where did I go wrong? It doesn't matter how good you did or you didn't do. There's still this an assessment of your life after 70 years, and you think, wow, maybe I should have done this. But I see how self-involved I was, and most of the time, you might have a heart for Jesus, but you still have your own motivation to do stuff, and it feels really incongruent, and that's why I still follow Jesus, because I'm so incongruent. There's like, and I hope that grace is working, because I don't look at all like I thought I did.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I had that same I kind of had a little bit of a moment in Christian music. It was kind of at the height of our career where I was like, what is this anyway? Like, what are we doing? We say we're about the gospel, but yet the industry just drives everything that we do. I'm not sure that we're
Mm.
really doing anything of value. I look back now and realize that was a little short-sighted, because I think,
You think?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But there does come a point, I think, for all of us where we have a crossroads where we go, what is, like, literally, what is this, and what is this supposed to be about? And so I definitely feel that. I think we've, just about everybody I've talked to on this podcast has had some sort of moment like that in their life.
Well, you know what? The one thing that I noticed, because Sweet Comfort Band got back together because Kevin had a injury where he was paralyzed from the bass player from his chest down, and we thought, well, we would get together and do another record and try to raise money for the outrageous bills that come with medical problems. He died before the record was finished, but the one thing that I remember is that we all had differences of opinion about everything, even down to the styles of music that we liked. But at the end of the day, 30 years later, we're doing this great record called "The Waiting Is Over," and it's some of the best stuff we ever wrote. Because I said I don't want to rehash the old days. Let's talk about what we learned over the last 30 years of serving Jesus. And that was the one thing we could agree on, is Jesus reigns. Jesus is who he said he is, and we're still following him. And that might be the only part of the Jesus movement that makes sense.
Wow. Well, I want to talk now about your solo career. How did you transition? Was that an easy transition, leaving Sweet Comfort Band and then going into your solo career?
I didn't quit the band to start a solo career. I know that's the way it looks when the lead singer takes off on his own, but I was bone weary from being on the road all the time and being in hotels all the time. It's like I'm about ready to have a kid, and I'm going, I just want out. I want out, and I want to have a regular day and a regular job. And I got out, and I was digging ditches, for about 6 months. I got this job with a concrete company, and but it was wonderful because I thought I get to work, and then at 5 o'clock I get to go home, and I don't have to worry about what the next gig is, or it's that work's going to be there tomorrow.
That is, so people who don't do what we did, that they don't understand that mentality right there, because I've had people in my life go, why in the world would you give that up? You're living the dream. I'm like, I want to know your life. I want to know what it's like to, have dinner with your family every night, or, wake up in your own bed every night. These are things I would get emotional about it, just going, you don't understand what this robs from you when you're out on tour all the time. So I totally get that.
I was on tour with Stephen Curtis Chapman, the My Utmost for His Highest tour. And I'll never forget the day that he was on the phone, and he was like a headliner everywhere. But he was on the phone with his management, and he was trying to get 2 weeks vacation with his family, and he was booked into eternity. I mean, it's like he could not get 2 weeks off. I mean, I'm going, and right when you think, if you're the biggest thing on the planet, that you'll be able to control your own destiny, what you start to realize is, no, people are dependent on you twice as much.
Yeah.
And now your life is not your own. You're a meal ticket somehow. And so there's a downside to all of that. I know when Bob Carlile had a platinum selling record, I sang on it, by the way. So he sent me a record. That's what I got.
Nice.
We traded labor for that album. I'm going, that was the dumbest move I ever made. Should have got a point or something. But, he wasn't even, Sparrow had already fired him, because he was too fat.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, he goes and makes this record, and it's just huge. But, he said later he became almost a recluse, because people were in his face all the time. And then eventually he says, the higher up on the hill you get, the more sniper fire you take. He says, people just start, bad mouthing you and, crude, rude, and, So I took a long time to understand that some of the things that I thought about having an impact were not good. They were not good. And, you know, I mean, where he just didn't want to be seen in public, you know, he'd hide out. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I was at a point where I would, you know, if you walk into a room, you're waving at people, and it's just a doctor's office and you're waving, but I have to wave because somebody might be in the room that knows me, and then I snub them.
Yeah. It's just, it's so weird that, that's just such a thing that goes with what we do. People think they know us, but they really don't know us. And it's hard to let people in, isn't it?
No, you know what? I never had a problem with that. I went out of my way to be offhanded, and you know that got me in a lot of trouble. You know, you say the wrong thing all the time. All the time, I would say something awful, and I'm going, you know, maybe it was a blurting problem. I don't know, but at the end of the day, you know, I do my podcast now myself, and I don't know how many people are on there. I don't even know how many people subscribe. But my thing doesn't even tell you how many you have. But, you know, I remember everybody's name now. I couldn't have told you, you know, 50 years ago that, you know, who the promoter was.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have known his name. I just showed up on time and played my gig. And,
yeah, that was me. That was a lot of my attitude as well.
But now I know first and last names of most of the people that listen to my podcast. I'm going, oh, I know them. I know them too. And sometimes I know their kids and their, you know, their fiascos and everything else. But, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, I do feel like people matter, and, you know, but you can't group them into these people and those people, because as soon as you do that, you know, they lose an edge. It's harder to love a group of people than it is to, well, I know this guy.
Right.
And he's complex, and and every one of us have these off balance areas of our lives. And it's easier for me to love somebody if I know, well, that's just John.
Yeah.
John,
well, that's that was what was helpful for me when I transitioned off the road to becoming a worship pastor at a local church. Was I felt like I just couldn't wrap my head and my arms around these big groups of people that would come to our concerts or that wanted to be a part of our lives. But as a church pastor, like you said, you get to know people a little more. You get to know their stories, and you get to pour into their lives. They get to pour into your lives. And that was, to me, that was kind of the antidote of a lot of what
absolutely
I didn't get and couldn't get out of the Christian music.
Well, you know what, when you're looking at a crowd, you start to lose a sense of personality and intimacy with human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, suddenly it's just a giant monster over here, and you know, it's like going to Walmart late at night. You just lose all faith in humanity. It's like, you know, I don't know. It's just I've really come a long ways, and just going. When COVID hit, I mean, I was like being unemployed. You know, I wasn't doing any concerts, and suddenly I got to know my granddaughters that are still, they're not even 7. You know, they're like little rugrats, and man, I'm going, where did I miss this? You know, when my kids were young, I wasn't there, and now it's hard to imagine that in a catastrophic change of life, that I would actually find something that was maybe more valuable than anything that I had found in the past.
Wow. I love that. I feel the same way about my grandkids. I feel like it's God giving me a do-over of, you know, the time that I missed with my kids being on the road. And now I have 5 grandchildren of my own that I can.
Yeah, me too. 5.
I can, yeah, congratulations. And you know, it is a real gift. And, you know, I think that, you know, as talking to you, Bryan, I feel this brotherhood of the same roads that we walked and some of the same issues that we had. That, man, God's just so gracious for us just to be sitting here today, all these years later, just be able to talk about it and laugh about it.
Here.
And yeah, we're still here. You can't get rid of us.
More people are calling us grandpa. That's the one thing I'm just going, wait, what? You know, I used to be somebody. You're trying to tell your grandkid, I used to be somebody. I'm
Well,
not
Dave,
anymore now.
so if you're like me, my grandkids, I've got two 6-year-old grandsons, and they discovered my music about 3 years ago, and they
Mhm.
call it poppy music. I want to hear poppy music, and whether it's my solo stuff or for him or whatever. And now I have a couple of like a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old grandsons, and they've just started hearing my music, and so it's really special. It really is special because
Well, they're
that's
listening to your stuff. That's better than me. I
yeah.
don't think they're listening to me.
Oh yeah,
Although
they are.
I've got a little granddaughter. She's like 3, and she doesn't, because I still play music, and I practice I play at my church a lot when I'm home, and all she knows is Grandpa screams a lot. It's like she'll go in there and she knows how to turn on my keyboard and get in front of the mic, and then she just pound on the keys and scream at the top of her lungs, because that's what Grandpa does. Like, I don't think she thinks it's good, but she just thinks it's a classic behavior of old men.
I love it. Hey, let's talk about some of your solo stuff if we could, just
Sure.
because that's where, man, that's really where I picked up your music was, and I said in my intro, your first record, that was just, I don't know. I was like, okay, because I was discovering, I was discovering the Imperials and DeGarmo and Key and so many of those bands that were cutting edge for me. Just going, this sounds as good as what I'm hearing on secular radio, and the
Mhm.
talent level is the same, and that fascinates me because growing up as a teenager in the early '80s, in Waco, Texas, I didn't know anything about Christian music. It was just all square hymns, very
Mhm.
choral sounding, maybe a musical that was written, would come to my church, and the choir would
Yeah.
sing it. And I'm just like, if this is Christian music, I don't really know that I want to be a part of it. But then I hear, have yourself committed. And I'm like, oh, well, now if it's like that, I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to heathen bands.
Oh,
Have
so was
Yourself
I.
Committed it was inspired by Stray Cats. In fact, when I went solo, I even had that bouffant, that looked like the hood ornament on a Pontiac, or maybe the Cadillac bumpers, way out here. I don't know why I was so into that, because they were so loose, and I just thought, man, I want to loosen up. And so Have Yourself Committed it was the perfect thing too, because I was thinking, when I got out of the band and somebody offered me a record contract, it was about a year after I'd got out of the band. Um, I didn't know exactly what to do with it, but I was thinking, first thing I thought was, where do I go from the Sweet Comfort Band? And the first thing I thought was, I should have myself committed. And it wasn't a joke. I was just thinking I should be in an insane asylum somewhere. And so that became the record title. And then it became, I think we sold more T-shirts of that title than I
Oh
sold
yeah, it's a
records.
brilliant marketing title.
It was like all of
Yeah.
the youth group things, and then I was doing youth group things till I was, I was already in my 30s, and I'm doing these high school things, and that'll stunt your growth right there when you're getting older and the audience stays in high school. And I'm going, that wigged me out after a while, and I started to realize, I don't have a good concept of the process of life, the process of living and dying and aging. So, eventually that would bite me.
What so tell me how your solo career progressed. So after the first record, was the first record like, did it sell a lot? Was it a critical hit? What was the fire underneath that?
I have no idea. I did a first record with Light Records. They were right up the street, kind of from Maranatha Music, in Simi Valley somewhere. And I just did the record, and I was kind of excited about it, but I don't know what it did. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many it sold or anything. I just know that it opened the door. Um, Have Yourself Committed was such a goofy song that I think it did okay on radio, but it seems like we did another. Their very next record was Holy Rollin', and that was on Light. But then after that, Light Records was going out of business, and I followed the A&R guy, Gary. I can't think of his last name. Who started a new record company called Modern Art, and I did. I think it was my third record with him, and it was like no budget. I mean, if you look at that album cover, it's black and white, and then they added some red, because we could barely afford 2 colors on the album cover. It was like that was.
Yeah.
But I'll be doggone if I think "Don't You Want to Rap" is on that, and
wow.
that song took off. I mean, it back then. KYMS out in Southern California was just they were competing with the major rock stations for listeners. I mean, they were pretty big. And the first time they told me, they said, "Don't You Want to Rap" just eclipsed "Friends Are Friends Forever" that Michael W. Smith had.
Huh.
He'd had that song on. It was the #1 song for like 7 years straight. And I'm going, no kidding. I was making fun of rap music. And then that thing, that was a punk, because I was making fun of it, and then it's the biggest thing on my record, and my audience started showing up with their hats on backwards, and I'm going, might have made a mistake.
I love
but that's what got Word's attention, was after that.
And what was the first album on Word?
Oh man, I'm having a hard time remembering what happened next.
I've got them pulled up here. What year would that have been? Was that Lunatic Friend?
Well, there's 85 was Committed. 86 was Holy Rollin'.
Yeah.
87 was Strong Medicine.
Okay.
Pretty sure Strong Medicine.
Whistling in the Dark.
Then Whistling in the Dark might have been that one.
Yeah. And so what was your first big radio hit when you went over to Word? What was the song that really kind of just? Oh man. Kind of set it all
I don't
in
even remember. I got to tell you, I didn't look at the charts. Because I'm so insecure that if I looked at a chart and I was number 2 in any, it's like it's not that you're number 2 out of 100. It's like, no, I don't matter because I'm not number 1. It's like, the insecurity of being an artist is just, I wouldn't even look at the photo shoots. I'm just going, just pick something, because, I don't, horror, you just carry this horrified, you see yourself and you're going, that's me. That's it. That's the way I look. How am I going to have a career with a face like that? It's like, and being fat. And every time, didn't matter how much weight you had or you'd lost, you always look just a little pudgy, in an album cover. I'm going.
I can't tell you maybe one album cover I liked the way I looked, and that was like way towards the end. But yeah, I'm with you. I hated doing music videos too. I don't know if you ever did many of those, but I hated.
Oh yeah,
them.
I did some really expensive ones. They did make me look really good once. They spent $50,000 on a single video. It was called Traces of Heaven. And man, that guy, all he did was they didn't even do makeup. He just used lighting. And we were outdoors nonetheless. And man, I almost fell in love with myself. I'm going, well, I see it on the camera on the playbacks. I have to be there and I have to see it. And I'm going, wow, I don't think I've ever looked that good in my life. Yeah. So, there was that one time. The rest of the thing was, I think Whistling in the Dark, the song, the first hit on the radio was Whistling in the Dark. And I think it was because all of my stuff was 6/8 grooves. I mean, I always have a swing feel.
Yeah, you do.
And I just thought, I remember where I was sitting. I was sitting at a turn signal in Riverside, and I thought, I need to do something straight up and down. Dun, dun, dun. I spent my time between the answers. Dun, 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 dun. It was like, this is the first time I'd done something that was straight up and down.
Yeah.
And I'm going, it just figures, once again, I have by mistake, created something that they liked. And, so you kind of you walk through your whole career going, all the successes that I've had have been total mistakes. It was like, every time a song would be on the radio, you're going, that's it. that's what they want to play.
That's so interesting that you would have that concept because, yeah, it's funny. A lot of artists don't like their biggest hits. They don't like.
Wait, yeah, Holy Rollin'
Uh-huh.
was I had Howard McCrary playing piano on it, and I just wanted to do something really up tempo, frenetic, and that really got a lot of airplay too.
Yeah,
And
that was
it's like,
fun.
but I almost lost my voice, going on. You sing that in the studio, and then you realize, oh, I got to go out and scream 5 times a week. It's like, and suddenly all those James Brown licks are starting to wear and tear on you.
So how was it being a solo artist, now having to carry everything? And you're not being in a band anymore, or not being in a group anymore. I know you're the lead singer for Sweet Comfort Band, but being on your own had to have a different weight to it, did it not?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you walk out and you're by yourself, and
Yeah.
when I first started, I would dress really wild, black leather pants and a red shirt and a yellow tie and a plaid jacket. I was trying to anything that could make me look like I was bringing something. I might as well have been doing stand up as far as I could tell. So it was scary, and I didn't do guitar stuff. I mean, like heavy rock stuff, because I didn't have a guitar player most of the time. And I thought, well, people will tolerate sound sampled drums and bass, and I can get away with playing a little bit of piano and filling it in that way. But I was probably squirrelier than I really wanted to be, because I felt like I was at a disadvantage in keeping people's attention. At some point, I would go to my management and say, and describe myself as the dancing bear. If you remember,
Yeah.
if you remember Captain Kangaroo,
Yeah.
I was the dancing bear. I just felt like, man, I just get out there and I do dumb stuff, just frenetic dumb stuff, because I'm just trying desperately to not suck.
Or keep the audience attention. Do you feel like that was part of it too? Because I remember I had a solo career for a very short time and I hated it, just because I felt that weight of all eyes on me for an hour and a half, and I've got to keep them from walking out. And that's a hard thing to kind of carry, especially if you're not just this. I just never felt like I was a born performer. Like I just wasn't going to be that guy that kept everybody's attention for that long.
If you don't carry that rock star look, you're not skinny enough, and you're not really animated enough, all that stuff. But I gotta say, I was happier in my solo career because I had more say so.
Sure.
I paid my taxes on time, which was a miracle, and I was able to support myself. I mean, at the end of the Sweet Comfort Band, I was making $200 a week, because we would salary ourselves, and then all the money would go into records and whatever else we needed to get. But it was just not, at 30 years old, you're making $200 a week. It's like, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. And that was a lot of people's stories back then. Just about everybody talked to from that era, very few were making any amount of money that could sustain a family. You had to pretty much break your neck just to put food on the table. But then, you've got this great, you look back, it's not all perfect, but you look back and you've got this really great catalog that you can be proud of, and that people still love. And
that's where I feel consistency, that I've remained faithful to my calling, even when it didn't feel good, and even when I didn't know where we were going. Even though when you're not sure what your calling is, even you're going, wow, I've stayed in touch with Jesus, and I take those inventories of my life all the time and think about where my priorities are and where I'm not doing it right, and there's plenty of those. I got a whole list over here.
Yeah, let's go down that list, shall we?
God help us if we ever publish any of my sins. That's like, I don't know.
So, every artist pretty much has the same story. There's a career arc, that you kind of crest, and then it starts to decline, and you have to decide, how hard do I want to work to keep that momentum from going all the way down to the bottom? When was that for you? I mean, when did you realize okay, things are shifting. I've got to kind of change my,
Well, you
you
know what?
know,
That was a gradual process for me too. It, the first one was when I started seeing Stephen Curtis Chapman. Would He opened for me in the early days at a couple of events, but I started to realize that he was getting more accolades, and DC Talk too. They opened for me in Toronto, and I really felt like they stole the show. I mean, the kids were more interested in what they were doing because they had more hip hop flavor to it. And I started to realize, I'm gradually sliding. Who else was it that was, it was Steve Taylor well, I opened for Steve Taylor, so that was a different thing. But on the Slow Revival tour, I was with Crystal Lewis and Anointed, and it was a great lineup. But Israel Houghton came on that show, and he would open he would sing a few songs before the concert even started, and eventually, he was like light years bigger than I was. And that's when you start going, okay, things are going a different direction. Not only are they going a different direction because you're no longer the flavor of the year, but it was just, corporate worship was that was the final straw. I'm just going,
yeah.
well, I don't like this stuff for the most part. I mean, there's a few songs that I think, wow, that's pretty good. But I get the sense that, whoever's singing has only known Jesus for like 2 weeks. And that's as deep as the song is. And it's got to be really bombastic. And, really, there can't be any nebulous thing in it. And, it was clear that my music was coming from somewhere else. I was always singing to the back row and imagining that if they were believers at all, they were not sold on the whole enchilada. You know what I mean? I was always singing to people, understanding that they have their reservations about faith, because there's a lot to question. And I don't know. I'm comfortable with it now. I'm going, well, I sing my songs for people that want to hear them, but I don't. I play at my local church, and we don't play any of my songs. It's like, because they're not godly enough. They're not. I play "I Love You with My Life." That's the only song I play at my church.
Oh, which
And
is
that's for the
which is a great
communion.
song. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
Well, I
my
mean,
wife still cries over that one. She still cries when
oh,
I sing.
wow.
But
Wow.
that's it. The rest of the songs are just not quite Christian enough, or not quite church worship.
So
So,
yeah, I would push back on the not Christian enough, because you're just sharing your faith through your
yeah,
lyrics
sure.
and your emotion and your musicianship, but it's not, yeah, you're right. It's not corporate worship. And that's what, and again, we talked about this earlier. It's so different now because everything kind of follows down the same line. Even Christian music kind of follows down the same line, of very
Yeah.
safe, very homogenized. And I just I miss your type of music. I miss what,
Me too.
artists
I
back in
miss it
those
too.
days. And so part of this podcast is to, you know, reintroduce people to the music of that era. And once they put it on, they go, wow, this sounds really good, because the production was A plus. They were great musicians in the studio that we had. And the songwriting it's just not it's not a discipline that you see much anymore in Christian music.
Well, you know what I'm doing, because of the movies that came out. A lot of people were asking me questions about the early days, kind of like we are now. But I started a little 6-minute diatribe on my podcast. The podcast is called nutshellsermons.com. And I didn't mean to start this, but every Thursday now, I tell the story of Jesus and music in the 1970s. And it's just the way I came up, and you can hear that. And it goes by really fast, because I don't want to hem and haw about stuff, and I'm not offering a lot of advice. I'm going, here it is. This is what happened. This is what I did, and this is what they did.
I love it. I think that we need more of that. I think we need to have a place for these stories, and podcasts, and these recordings. I think are going to be like time capsules for people to go back and say, I want to know more about the lives of these artists and
You know
what
what's
it was
really
like and
good?
the stories behind them. Yeah.
What's really been cool about that is, I've gotten in touch with a lot of old friends from way back. I mean, Phil Kagi and my old bandmate Randy Thomas, and the guys in Psalm 150, and the guys that were around, and I've learned stuff that I didn't even know was going on back then. So even the guys in Love Song, I know Chuck Girard pretty well now, and Tommy Coombs, and a little bit of Jay Truax. Those guys, they were the founding fathers of whatever was happening in the Jesus movement. And man, they didn't even make them sound like as good as they were. And that was a disappointing thing. So, and that's another thing I'm doing is I've been playing songs that you didn't hear, songs that didn't make the last record, or songs that didn't get airplay. The last one I played the first song that I ever heard from a group called The Road Home. And I mean, the song was not their best stuff, but he's playing a Hammond B3 on stage in the tent in the Jesus People days. And I mean, I was just floored. He sounded like Joe Cocker, and just tearing it up. And I'm going, so I had to play that. Occasionally I'll play a song that I heard that I thought, you should have heard this. Like Psalm 150. They sound like Sly and the Family Stone sometimes. But they, it was with a full horn section and everything. And they were around. Two of those guys wound up in Andre Crouch's Disciples, eventually,
Wow.
but they were around before that.
That's
So
awesome.
I played a couple of their songs too, from Psalm 150, because they didn't get any attention.
I can't wait to listen to it.
You know what? The bass player for Psalm 150, I found out later, he went, after that band broke up, he went and started a group called Night Ranger. It was like,
What?
this is a bass player. Yeah, he was a Night Ranger.
No way.
The lead singer.
That's one of my favorite
to be
80s bands. Yeah.
Yeah, the lead singer went on to be in a group called Rubicon.
Yeah.
And then James and Michael Escalante from Psalm 150 played with Andre Crouch and the Disciples for years after that.
Wow.
It's like, so you go, oh, I didn't even know that.